and it's starting to look kind of scary for those who are on it. There's already several websites dedicated to searching for email addresses for Ashley Madison. Now, part of my goal is to discover if there's any .chattanooga.gov sites on there in the archive, if there are. That'll be an interesting story. Now, see, what happened is, somehow, at some point, there was a huge leak, maybe about a week ago or so, huge leak of all the names of all the people who were on Ashley Madison. Now, Ashley Madison is a site that is designed for you to cheat on your spouse. In fact, the slogan, the tagline is, "Life is short, have an affair." That sounds a little bit questionable, we'll say. Yeah, I would not really want to do that personally, mostly because I'm an extremely loyal person, also because I am way too anxious to do anything like that, so no worries about me. No, I've already checked, actually. I'm not on Ashley Madison. I didn't know that, but oh well. No, I'm not on Ashley Madison, and neither is anyone whose email I've put in there, so go figure. But Ashley Madison is now in a bit of trouble. The hacker team was called Time's Up, apparently, and so the ransom was put forward, and rather no ransom was put forward for this information that was being held hostage. Apparently the CEO's email is also up for grabs, although the file appears to be corrupt as of now, so go figure. But Ashley Madison has seen a really bad move for Ashley Madison there. One of the funny things, too, is Ashley Madison is most likely going to have to go out of business, but also there's probably going to be a bunch of lawsuits. In fact, that's kind of what the hackers were hoping for. So I have several articles here open and spread out in front of me about Ashley Madison, and we'll try to sort through what's going on here. Ashley Madison's subscribers include hundreds of government workers as well, by the way. So the latest facepalm-worthy revelation from the Ashley Madison hack comes courtesy of the Associated Press, which is reporting that hundreds of government employees, some with sensitive jobs in the White House, Congress, and law enforcement agencies, used internet connections in their federal offices to pay for membership fees and use the dating site for cheating. The news organization poured over a massive trove of data that the hackers made available earlier this week. By tracing the IP addresses of people who visited the site over more than 5 years, AP reporters determined that the visitors included 2 assistant U.S. attorneys, an information technology administrator in the executive office of the president, a division chief, an investigator, and a trial attorney in the Justice Department, a government hacker at the Homeland Security Department, and another DHS employee who indicated that he worked on a U.S. counterterrorism response team. So tons and tons and tons of different federal employees are on Ashley Madison, which is not surprising, actually, because in order to work for the government, you kind of have to be a liar anyway, so it makes sense that you would also be on Ashley Madison. Many federal customers, according to an AP report, appear to use non-government email addresses with handles such as, and I kid you not, sexless marriage, soon to be single, or Latin lovers. Some Justice Department employees appeared to use prepaid credit cards to help preserve their anonymity, but connected to the service with their office computers, which is probably one of the dumber things you can do. Here's the thing. If you are going to do something like this, and I definitely don't recommend that you do, but let's say, just for the sake of argument, that you're trying to hide your identity, and that's fine, because you should be able to hide your identity anyway, but let's say that you want to hide your identity for purposes of journalism. So you want to hide your identity. How does one go about doing such a thing? Well, number one is you would use a computer that you have never used before. Don't use a computer that you are familiar with. Kind of a bad idea. So ensure that the computer you use is in, say, a public area like a public library. That public library is sort of a rinky-dink operation that doesn't really have cameras around there, that sort of thing. Make sure that that is the situation that you're in. You could technically, although I would not recommend it, you could technically use a virtual machine on a laptop at a public Wi-Fi hotspot, running Linux or something like that in your virtual machine, so it appears you're coming from a computer, which you're actually not. Run that through a proxy. There's all sorts of different efforts that you could take, but they're a little bit questionable, we shall say. So it's good that people can be anonymous, but when you're buying a service, you have to put in a credit card number and an address and a name and an email. You're really not being anonymous at that point, are you? And that's where the lawsuits may be coming in, because Ashley Madison touted itself as being the service that would be anonymous and all these sorts of things. But if it's not really, then it's not. So that could be false advertising potentially. So apparently, according to one of these reporters, I was doing some things I shouldn't have been doing, says a Justice Department investigator. Asked about the threat of blackmail, the investigator said if prompted, he would reveal his actions to his family and employer to prevent it, saying, "I've worked too hard all my life to be a victim of blackmail. That won't happen," he says. He spoke on condition of anonymity because he was deeply embarrassed and not actually authorized by the government to speak to reporters using his name. The AP's analysis also found hundreds of transactions associated with the Department of Defense networks, either at the Pentagon or from armed services connections elsewhere. Defense Secretary Ash Carter confirmed the Pentagon was looking into the list of people who use military email addresses. So it appears that there are actually quite a few email addresses being used by this service as well. So we're not sure what's going to come of that. But Ash Carter says, "I'm aware of it. Of course, it's an issue because conduct is very important, and we expect good conduct on the part of our people. The services are looking into it, and as they well should be, absolutely." Now, it would be very funny if Ash Carter turned out to be on Ashley Madison as well, although there is not really any proof of that being the case. It would be really funny if it were, especially since he was just here in Chattanooga. So it'd be really funny if Ash Carter actually logged into his Ashley Madison account when he was in Chattanooga. Although, again, there's no conclusive proof that Ash Carter actually has an Ashley Madison account. The revelations underscore just how severe the fallout can be from a data dump of this magnitude and sensitivity. In the weeks to come, the public is likely to identify hundreds or thousands of other people in high places who use the site. The potential for blackmail, failed marriages, and other hardships is high. What's more, a new download started circulating Thursday that's twice as big as the previous one, about 20 gigs, and it contains email belonging to the CEO of Ashley Madison's parent company, as well as internal documents. So this leak is about to get even worse, or better, depending on your perspective. As a journalist, as a news director, I'm both intrigued and shocked. You might say that I'm deeply concerned, but it's kind of funny as well. And it's funny for a lot of reasons, but the big reason for me is people sign up for this. You know what I mean? Like, people sign up for the whole Ashley Madison thing, and it's like you get what's coming to you after that point, right? I mean, really, because we're not talking about just like, oh, he went on a porn site when he was 15 or whatever. No, we're talking about like actual people signing up for actual affairs, and that's kind of questionable to say the least. So it sort of, people just get what's coming to them. Really, it's almost a form of retribution, you might say. But it's just shocking that that this sort of thing is happening, and it's kind of interesting as well to see how the public is handling this information, because people are sort of making a joke out of it, saying like, well, now we know who's on Ashley Madison. They're entering their friends' email addresses and that sort of thing, as I've been doing. And so it's interesting to see, for sure. There are services online already that will let you enter in an email address to see if that email is on Ashley Madison. Now, something that has to be kept in mind is that could very well be a whole, data mining attempt to get a bunch of emails. So keep that in mind. But other than that, it's really it's funny and terrifying and tragically funny at the same time. It's just all just accumulates into this one very big, tragic, funny thing. And there's going to be more on that in just a few minutes, too. We're going to talk about Ashley Madison just a bit more here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, where we are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. It's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You can save half off now. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com and click on the half off link for great deals. Hot News Talk Radio is saving you money. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. There's something that has been called to my attention just recently that I thought I would get into, and that is the issue of fake news stories popping up. I mean, you see hoaxes online all the time, right? I mean, you see, share this if you think that yada, yada, yada. It turns out that there are people putting razor blades in apples on Christmas, or not Christmas, but what's the holiday? Halloween, and all these sorts of things. And it makes you think like, wow, man, we live in a horrible world and people are doing really horrible, awful things. And that's true, but not always in the way that's described on the internet. See, we have a problem where you see things described on the internet that are not exactly, well, how do I put this? True. You see stories all the time about some, a drug story that your kids are doing drugs and you don't even know about it, sort of thing. It's all meant to work off of the fear that everyone naturally has about their kids going off and doing drugs or whatever, which is why you should do drugs and not tell your parents. But no, I never did that. Sorry, Mom. But it's just it plays off of people's emotions, and I hate that because people are overall very gullible. I am too. So it's not like, ooh, look how non-gullible I am. No, people are gullible. We want to believe terrible things sometimes. And one of the ones that has been going around and has been going around since about '07 is a thing about fake drugs going around, or not fake drugs, but real drugs being passed off as like pop rocks. There were many tip-offs in that particular memo, but here are some tips from me to you about how to spot a fake article when it pops up. Okay, number one, if you see an image that is of a piece of paper that has something on it, chances are that's immediately not real. Oddly enough, you wouldn't think it, but if you see a photo that is of a piece of paper that appears to be official, that it looks kind of odd, like the font is a little bit too big, then it's probably not real, actually, or it's been photoshopped, or it's a fake thing. It's easy to fake stationery anyway. I mean, we used to do it as kids all the time to make it look like we were sending, documents from the NSA. I mean, it was a fun thing we all did as kids. We were weird kids, though, granted, but still, it's just something that happens. It's what kids do. And sometimes you'll see stuff that's obviously fake, and it's really, really, really obnoxious. And here's one way to spot these sorts of things. If a story is fake, there's almost always a good tell. A fake story is kind of like a poker player. It has a tell. And if you can figure out what that tell is, then you can almost identify every single fake story after that one. So here's some tips from me to you. Number one, if a story says, please share this, chances are it's not real, or it has elements of real in it, but so much is fake that it may as well not be a real story. If a story has please share in it, then really that doesn't sound very reputable, does it? I mean, you don't see CNN doing please share at the bottom of one of their messages, or you don't see the AP saying please share, like and subscribe, like this if you agree, share if you agree, one like, one prayer, all that nonsense. Probably not real. So keep that in mind. When we're talking about, say, news stories that you see posted on Facebook all the time, you'll see stuff where it's like, this Marine got his legs blown off in Yugoslavia, and nobody will give him money. One like equals $1 or something like that. One like does not equal $1 for one. There's no way. And for another, it's meant to play on your heartstrings. Somebody's making cash off of this, but it's not going to a Marine. We'll put it that way. A lot of them, too, will link to a website that's this very odd sort of clickbait BuzzFeed sort of website that's not actually BuzzFeed. So it'll say, like, just as an example, you won't believe the thing that Obama just did. Click on this link to find out more. And you click on it, and it's this weird sort of black and white, poorly designed website that has a bunch of links at the bottom from Zergnet, and it's just really just obviously fake. To me, anyway. It's obviously fake to me because part of my job is to find out what fake stories are. But to the average person, they click on the story and they say, oh, that's just a story, when in actuality, it's something somebody made up, or a blog post, which is almost as bad. A lot of the time you'll see blog posts that are played off as headlines when they actually aren't very real at all. See, I understand the sentiment that you want to take down the regime, that you want to get rid of the whole, Obama administration thing. I get that, and I understand that. But the way to do it is through truth, not through manipulation. And using manipulation to try to pass a political point is really not going to work in your favor, because if somebody calls it out, and they will, you're going to look really dumb. So don't do that. The best way to do things is to actually find, classified documents, post them online. There are all sorts of ways to go about things. And generally speaking, posting a fake news story is not the way to do that, to say the least. But anyway, that's one way to spot a fake story, is if it says like if you agree, or please share, or whatever. Another thing is, and this is something that I noticed not too long ago, is a memo that was supposedly posted from a hospital, which actually was not. Fortunately, I'm news director and I can catch these things. But one of them was this supposed internal memo that actually had the words please share in it, which made no sense to me. It also had emoticons in it, and it actually had ellipses for no reason. Ellipses, by the way, are the three dots, dot, 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 that you see all the time, sort of to imply that a sentence is trailing off. People use that a lot when they don't know how to write sentences. So if you see that posted in a supposed news story, probably not real. Especially if you see emoticons in a news story, it's probably not real. My favorite form, though, of fake story is when you see someone holding up a sign that has text on it. That's my favorite one ever, because it's so easy to fake. It's so easy. You can do it literally in like 5 minutes on Photoshop. Now, not all of them are fake. That's the thing. You'll see on Facebook a photo of, say, a guy holding up a sign that says, "I fought in World War II, and I'm trying to find my war buddies. This is the regiment that I was in. This is where I was, and my name is this." Now, that makes sense, right? I mean, this makes perfect sense. You can understand why he does it. It has his face, and it has the information he's trying to get across. It also has very, very specific information that's easily checked, so chances are that one's real. Okay, that one gets a pass. But then you'll see a sign where it's like a little kid holding up a sign. "If this page gets 500 likes, my dad will stop smoking." Yeah, that's kind of, well, that's questionable to say the least. Or my favorite is, like if you think my kid's name should be this, and share if you think my kid's name should be this. When through my head is going, who cares what you name your kid? But for some reason, a lot of people want to interact with that. And I think that might be one of the underlying factors in this is interaction. People want to interact with other people, even if it means not actual interaction with other people. Again, this ties into the Ashley Madison thing, where it turned out that, according to the allegations anyway, on the Ashley Madison website, the people who the men were supposedly going to have affairs with were not actual real people, and may have actually been men themselves. So it would be really, really funny. I'm just imagining this scenario where this husband is in a darkened room in his basement, and it's 3 a.m, and he's chatting up, he's chatting up Michelle, and he's talking to Michelle, and he's like, "Man, hey, give me your phone number. Maybe we can chat." And she puts his phone number in, and he calls the number, and he goes, "Hi, is this Michelle?" She goes, "Yes, it's Michelle. I hear about you on Ashley Madison. Perhaps we are of speak about the what clothes you are wearing. This is Michelle, not Michael. This is Michelle. What clothes you are of wearing?" And oh, poor guy. He sees this and he immediately hangs up. And I really hope that has happened at least 1 or 2 times, because that would be so funny if you just answer the phone. "Hello, is Michael? Michelle. I'm here to be of talk to you about have affair with me. Please come to Siberia, where I am very attractive woman." Well, yeah, that's been happening actually a lot with Ashley Madison, as part of the allegations that on the Ashley Madison cheating site, you actually could run into people who were actually men posing as women. Ooh, there's nothing worse than running into a man posing as a woman. In fact, I will share a personal story with you that has nothing at all to do with me being me running into a man posing as a woman, although I do have a funny story about that. No, what I did was, and I was a terrible kid, by the way. I was a really awful kid 5 years ago. I was a really awful kid. One of the things I loved to do was to go on ICQ. I don't know if you remember ICQ. That was an old chat thing from years ago. I would go on ICQ, pretend to be a woman, and chat up guys, and then at the very end reveal that I was actually a 15-year-old boy the whole time. And the reaction was golden. I wish I'd saved text files of it, because it was just too funny. But gosh, I wish I could go back to being 15 sometimes, so I could get away with doing stuff like that without it being odd. If I do that at 20, people think that you're just an idiot. But if you do it at 15, it's really funny. So sometimes I wish I could just go back to being 15 so I could do stuff like that again. But oh well. Hackers behind the breach of the Ashley Madison cheaters dating service have revealed a second, much bigger dump of sensitive materials that may include a massive amount of email from the parent company's CEO, Noel Biderman, or Biederman, I don't know. The BitTorrent downloads 19 gigabytes and includes a 13 gigabyte file titled noel.biderman.mail.7zip, prompting speculation that it may contain email from Biederman, who is CEO of Ashley Madison, parent company Avid Life Media. Researchers have now completed the download and found the noel.biederman.mail.7zip file cannot be unpacked because it's inexplicably corrupted. According to this analysis, it ends up that the leak contains a ton of source code for the website. 73 different Git repositories are present for the Ashley Madison GitLab that they use internally. The 13 gigabyte compressed file, which could contain Ashley Madison's CEO email, seems to be corrupted, and the leak contains a plain text or poorly hashed MD5 DB credentials. So long story short, we're not sure yet what's in this second leak to come out of Ashley Madison. The story keeps unfolding, and it keeps getting worse and worse, or better and better, depending on your perspective. Of course, we'll bring you continuing coverage of the Ashley Madison leaks right here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. We have a ton of great programming here. You may have heard the Eric Judd show. David Tulis show is also on Hot News Talk Radio. We have Daybreak USA. After me is Laura Ingraham, and then Sean Hannity. Hot News Live at 5. Cowboy with Tex, which is now actually for a brief period of time, the Clutch show with Keon Rose. He talks about sports. All of that right here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. And, of course, hotnewstalkradio.com for your smartphone as well. Get the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the Mom Road. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. Some government workers may be caught up in the scandal over a website for adultery.
The AP traced IP addresses back to people who frequented Ashley Madison and found many of them access the site via their work computers. The exposure is potentially embarrassing and could have career implications. Defense Secretary Ash Carter.
We expect good conduct on the part of our people.
Security clearances may be at risk for some workers because being on the cheating website could make them vulnerable to blackmail.
Fox Radio's Rachel Sutherland. Mourning in Washington State for the 3 firefighters who lost their lives Wednesday.
20-year-old Tom Buchetsky, 26-year-old Andrew Zajac, and 31-year-old Richard Wheeler, all part of an elite team trained to assess developing fires.
Fox's Will Carr and researchers think they may have received the oldest ever message in a bottle. Tossed into the North Sea sometime between 1904 and 1906, bottle washed up on a German island. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I have been talking about license plate readers for quite a while, actually, and I realize that perhaps a bit of explanation is in order. You see, a license plate reader, or LPR, as it's commonly known, it does just that, actually. It scans your license plate and puts your license plate number into a database or checks it against a database to see if the car you are driving has been stolen. So license plate readers, or ALPRs, which are automatic license plate readers, have been on phones, or not phones, pardon, have been mounted on cop cars for a long time now, maybe 5-6 years, which in my standard is a really, really long time because I'm a youngin'. But these devices have been planted on cars for a very, very long time. annoyingly enough. What this means is if you are even in front of a police car, your license plate is being checked against a database. Now, this could potentially be a unreasonable search, although some would also argue that you get a license plate by means of contract, essentially, so then you waive that right to not be searched. And that sounds kind of odd to me, but whatever. Well, this has been standard practice with with cars, unfortunately, for quite a long time. So, or rather, with cop cars for quite a long time now, and people have sort of become resigned to their fates, essentially, when it comes down to these sorts of cop cars and having these emplacements on these cop cars. Well, unfortunately, it gets worse because apparently now we are working on putting license plate readers on garbage trucks now as well. San Jose, California, which is America's 10th largest city, I have never been there, but I'll just go with that, isn't just content to put license plate readers on police cars anymore. Rather, it now wants to deputize garbage trucks to be an additional tool in its ongoing surveillance. According to the San Jose Mercury News, the mayor and one city councilman put forward a new proposal on Wednesday that would allow sanitation vehicles to use the scanning devices and feed the data automatically to city police. We can cover every street at least once a week and possibly deter thieves from coming into our city, says Councilman Johnny Camus to the paper. If passed, the city would likely become the first in the country to expand a law enforcement tool to another public entity besides parking enforcement. Currently, only 6 San Jose Police Department cars currently have license plate readers, or LPRs, but there are plans to acquire 2 more to cover this city of more than 1 million people. By contrast, the nearby city of Oakland, California, with a population of 390,000, has 33 LPRs mounted on police vehicles. In March of 2015, Ars Technica obtained the Oakland Police Department's 4.6 million reads of over 1.1 million unique plates, which were gathered between December 23, 2010 and May 31, 2014, as part of a public records request. The data set showed precisely how revelatory such information can be. The council member justified the use of LPRs with a refrain common among proponents of the technology that people driving on public roads have no reasonable expectation of privacy, saying, "You're not expecting privacy on a public street," he added. But aware that privacy advocates would be scrutinizing how the data was going to be collected, he also noted that the city would talk to the ACLU before they do anything. Well, that's all fine and dandy. Talk to the ACLU all you want. But unfortunately, that doesn't really help out a whole lot. I mean, think about this. Something that the article failed to mention is that Ars Technica also found out that with some clever rigmarole, they can actually use the information from this records request in order to make a map and find out the addresses of people and find out their common routes as well. So it really just... It leads to so many different problems because this is now in public record, right? Like your license plate is now a matter of public record, meaning that, well, it always was, but you and your license plate are now a matter of private record. Now, what happens when a license plate is scanned and put in the database is the location of the scan is also noted. So if a cop is driving by your house or even just sees your car parked somewhere, that is noted. So that might not sound like a big deal to you, but that means that if I say I'm a thief and I file a private records request or public records request, which I could do rather easily, and I obtain all this information, I find out where a bank manager lives, and I know where he goes to work and I know what time he goes to work every day roughly, then that leads to quite a few problems. Or I find out that General so-and-so is living in this particular area. I know what his license plate number is now, and I know that he goes to work every single day and he lives alone, so I can go into his house and get potentially vital records. There are lots of different things that sound very far-fetched. The potentiality is there, though. So in attempting to create a lesser risk, a greater risk is actually created, which kind of happens all the dang time when we're talking about governmental structure. Like, for instance, they say, well, we will protect the public by restricting the purchase of fully automatic firearms, so you needed a very expensive license in order to purchase a fully automatic firearm. Now, that sounds in and of itself quite good. That sounds like a great measure. As a consequence, though, now only criminals are going to be getting firearms who don't have these proper licenses, and your average private citizen is not going to be able to buy a fully automatic firearm, meaning that criminals who have no regard for the law are going to be getting these fully automatic weapons with no issue because they're not going to get a registry. They're not going to go with the NFA thing. They're not going to pay the tax stamp. They're not going to get the license. They're not going to talk to the sheriff. They're not going to do any of that. So they buy a fully automatic weapon, and now only criminals have fully automatic weapons, and a very few, small number of wealthy people. And there's nothing wrong with a wealthy person owning a firearm. Everyone should be able to own a firearm. But it seems kind of unbalanced, to put it lightly. And then you have areas like, say, Chicago, where there's a whole bunch of rigmarole you have to go through to get a firearm there, and then to carry it, may as well forget it. But criminals don't care about that. So you have criminals carrying guns all over the place, and private citizens are not able to protect themselves against these people who are carrying firearms, because law-abiding citizens are not going to break the law, and thus are not able to protect themselves under the statutes that are in Illinois. So that leads to quite a few problems over in Illinois, to be sure. Well, according to Ars Technica, FLIR 1 round 2, the thermal imaging camera, has dropped in price $100 and now is getting a new shape as well. Last year, senior editor Lee Hutchison played with the FLIR 1, which is a $349 iPhone case that had 2 embedded cameras to bring you all the power of the Predator in John McTiernan's 1987 film Predator. That is, the camera took infrared measurements of its surroundings, producing an awesome thermal image that transcended the visible spectrum. So now FLIR, a military and industrial technology company based out of Portland, Oregon, has come back with a second version of this consumer-grade product. Now it's priced at $249. This next generation accessory is called the FLIR 1, but this time the company has eschewed the iPhone case for a dongle that attaches to the bottom of a compatible iOS device via the Lightning port. Better yet, the FLIR 1 is no longer iOS exclusive, and an Android-compatible dongle works with a handful of Samsung and Asus phones, as well as the HTC One M8 and the LG V400. On top of that, the company is saying that the long-wave infrared sensor called the Lepton core, found in the 2015 FLIR 1, has 4 times the resolution of the one found in the 2014 FLIR 1. So, Ars Technica thought they'd try it out again a year later, and it turns out that the camera is actually quite good. So, long story short, you actually can buy a infrared military-grade camera for your iPhone or very few Android phones. So go figure. Quite exciting stuff. You can actually have a Android phone that actually takes thermal images. I mean, who would have thought? It's just so nuts to think about. So if you were questioning whether or not you could get a thermal image from your smartphone, now you actually can. So exclusive on the radio from us here at Hot News Talk Radio, you now can get a thermal image on your smartphone, so you could possibly you could jury rig it into a security camera of some sort. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com, or download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. It's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You can save half off now if you go to hotnewstalkradio.com and click on the half off link for great deals. Hot News Talk Radio is saving you money. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. And we have a ton of great programming as well here on Hot News Talk Radio. We have Daybreak USA. We have the David Tulis Show. We have the Eric Judd Show. We have my show, of course, there's Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. We're talking about technology and quite a bit more. We also have Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Hot News Live at 5. We have Keon Rose on at 6, where he talks about sports. We also have America Now, Ground Zero, and Coast to Coast AM, all right here on Hot News Talk Radio. And we also are the exclusive carrier of NASCAR in our area right here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. Google has, in a rather strange twist, been ordered to remove stories about it removing stories. Yeah, Google has now been ordered to remove links to some stories about the right to be forgotten rule in Europe as a result of the right to be forgotten ruling. Yeah. According to the ruling, which was passed in a European court last year, citizens can request search engines to remove links to stories with unflattering personal material from its search results. At the time, Google removed links to stories about one man's criminal offense in 1998 that he argued was no longer relevant. However, in later stories about the right to be forgotten, included his name and the offense that spurred their removal in the first place. So in sort of a paradox, this sort of thing is happening now. You see, in Europe, you can request or actually demand that Google remove certain stories about you if it's deemed that these stories are irrelevant, potentially slanderous, or are out of date or whatever. So let's say that I was at one time charged with we'll say sexual assault in this case. Now, I never have been, obviously, but let's say that I have been. Now, that was overturned, or I was deemed not guilty. Okay, cool. But still, that's going to show up when you search for me. Russell filed with or charged with sexual assault in 2011 or whatever. So that leads to some problems on my record. My potential new employer is going to look that up and see that. Well, in order to help to fix that problem, Europe has passed a law, and I mean the entirety of Europe. This is a European Commission thing, where if you are in Europe, you can ask that Google remove any sort of search results about that particular incident, using that as an example. So that's called the right to be forgotten, which I don't think is actually a common law right. I'm not sure where they're getting that from. I guess they just made up a new right. Why not? So now you have a right to be forgotten in Europe, except you don't, because you can't just make up rights. It doesn't really work that way. But anyway, whatever. According to the ruling, which passed in a European court last year, citizens can request search engines remove links to stories that have unflattering personal material from its search results. At the time, Google removed links to stories about one man's criminal offense in 1998 that he argued was no longer relevant. However, later stories about the right to be forgotten included his name and the offense that spurred their removal in the first place. Google now has 32 days to remove the stories about the removal of the stories. Yeah, David Smith, who's Deputy Commissioner of the UK's Information Commissioner's Office, reasoned that since stories were originally removed from their search engines because they were considered no longer relevant, there's no reason not to remove stories that include the same data, even if they're not the main thrust of said articles. So they say, let's be clear. We understand that links being removed as a result of this court's ruling is something that newspapers want to write about. And we understand that people need to be able to find these stories through search engines such as Google, wrote Smith. But that does not need them to be revealed when searching on the original complainant's name. What? Gizmodo's Kate Nibbs noted the recursive and humorous situation that the ICO found itself in. Smith fails to mention how the ICO will handle purging news stories about the news stories about purging the news stories about purging the news stories, she wrote on Thursday in a story file tagged Meta, to say the least. So what's happening now is the European Commission is attempting to control the internet in a way that really has not been tried before, and it's not working out too well. In fact, it's kind of silly. Now, we have something like that something similar to that here in the United States, but not quite as bad yet. The FCC, of course, passed net neutrality, which was in and of itself not that bad in terms of the content of net neutrality, but it represents a precedent, which is a foot in the door in terms of the FCC claiming jurisdiction over the internet, which, of course, the FCC has no right to do. The internet is not American, believe it or not. The internet is an international conglomerate. It does not belong to any one nation. No one nation can claim that the internet is ours. The United States cannot say, this is our internet. The European Commission cannot say, this is our internet. Japan cannot say, this is our internet. The Russians even can't say, this is our internet, because the internet is a privatized thing. It does not belong to anyone. The internet is kind of like, well, it's kind of like the world. It doesn't really belong to anyone, or it's very nebulous, kind of like outer space, where you can't say the moon belongs to anyone. How could that be? You can't say that Mars belongs to anyone. It's just that it's information and it's there. You can look at it, you can observe it, but it doesn't belong to you. Now, you might own a website, just as maybe the United States will lay claim to one segment of the moon, maybe the area around the American flag that's now bleached white because of radiation that's on the moon. They can you could see an argument for them laying claim to that, but not the entirety of the thing. That's far too big. And plus, how do you lay claim to something you never even set foot on? So it seems kind of odd. It's like laying claim to a concept. It's not your concept. Once it's been conceived, it's a meta thing. It's totally out there. It doesn't exist in one singular entity that you can claim as yours. And that's how the internet is too, where no one can say, this is my website, this is my website, this is my website. All of the internet is mine, including all of the Netflix information that's out there, including all of the emails that you may have, including all of everything that's on the internet, not just the World Wide Web. It's all mine. So that doesn't really work. Nobody can lay claim to the internet. No entity, no thing can lay claim to the entirety of the internet. And yet the FCC sort of claimed to be able to do that in having jurisdiction over the internet, which really the FCC can't claim at all. It doesn't work that way. Any more than, say, the Russians could say, the website, the internet is ours because people within Russia post on the internet all the time. So we claim jurisdiction over these Russian websites. We would be kind of annoyed if they did that, or even if the Russians said that this pipeline going from Russia to the United States is now ours, and we lay claim to it, and we claim jurisdiction over it. We'd be kind of annoyed if they did that. So where do we get off doing exactly the same thing? Seems kind of hypocritical. It's actually extremely hypocritical, but welcome to the United States. We're extremely hypocritical here in our practices. So the FCC is doing exactly that, being extremely hypocritical in its practices. So fortunately, the internet is being somewhat sort of kind of privatized, and the FCC really couldn't possibly enforce some of the regulation that it hopes to. So that's a good thing too. That's sort of the thing about government, though, is you'll notice that there are a lot of things which are not enforceable at all. Kind of like gun laws really just aren't enforceable, but there's a new one that's coming out. It's a law against stun guns. Stun guns are technically, according to some anyway, which is not true, according to some, you do not have a right to bear stun guns. Yeah, well, we all know that that's not true, but in some jurisdictions, apparently the Second Amendment does not apply to electrical arms somehow. Even though it says the right to bear arms, to keep and bear arms, you would think that electrical arms would fall under that because it's just that, an electrical arm. Somehow that doesn't apply here. They say, according to Ars Technica, the intent of the Second Amendment is up for debate yet again. This time, the controversy illuminates a modern-age quandary about whether electrical weapons like stun guns or even homemade 3D printed weapons are constitutionally protected. One of the last substantial rulings on weapons came from the Heller case in 2008, in which the Supreme Court overturned a District of Columbia statute banning handgun possession within your house. Wow. The top court said that such a law violates the Second Amendment and does the law's prohibition against rendering any lawful firearm in the home operable for the purpose of immediate self-defense. Fast forward to today, several years later, in fact, over 5 years later, following the Heller decision, and every state allows people to carry firearms of sorts outside the home. Some states say it's okay with or without permits. So, what about electrical arms such as a stun gun, which was invented in 1972? Are those covered under this line of Supreme Court reasoning? Currently, that's not exactly clear. The Supreme Court is being asked to decide in a case challenging a Massachusetts ban on the private collection of a private possession, I should say, of a stun gun or a portable device or weapon from which an electrical current, impulse, wave, or beam is designed to incapacitate, temporarily injure, or kill. Yeah. The challenge before the justices comes in a burgeoning era in which a hodgepodge of weapons are being constructed at home, DIY style, via 3D printing technology. Now, again, in and of itself, that's totally fine. You can 3D print a gun, and that's totally cool. You see, I'm not going to make any argument whatsoever against the possession of any weapon. I don't care. You can own a suitcase nuke. I don't care. Well, okay, maybe you couldn't own a suitcase nuke. That would be a little bit out there. But plus, suitcase nukes don't actually exist, by the way. A suitcase nuke was presented as a theoretical thing, and it does not actually exist. The smallest known documented nuclear device is about as big as carry-on luggage, and it emits a radiation field so very obvious that it would be detected at any sort of proper detection facility. In fact, if you drove on the road with this device, it would be detected by different devices that are on the road specifically designed to detect radioactive devices. So you really couldn't get away with having a suitcase nuke. There's no way that you could get away with detonating a suitcase nuke, even if they did exist, and they don't. So no problems there. But anyway, yeah, there's a whole big issue about suitcase nukes. I've gotten in debates about suitcase nukes before. They don't exist. They never have. The smallest nuclear device ever was designed by the United States military, and it's very, 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 very difficult to get around, we'll say. So the whole issue of a suitcase nuke is just out the window. They don't exist. They never have. They possibly will, but not now. Anyway, so I'm not going to make any argument against you owning or bearing or possessing or brandishing, well, maybe brandishing, any sort of weapon. You can own a machine gun. I don't care. You can own a howitzer cannon. So long as you don't harm anyone else with it, I really don't care. You see, the issue doesn't come with the ownership of the weapon itself. I don't care about that. The issue comes with you harming somebody else. So there is no issue at all until you've harmed someone else. And as soon as that happens, then problems start to occur. But until you've harmed somebody, no wrong has been committed. Possession of something is really not wrong. It's not a moral imperative that we stop people from owning things. You know, like I could own a Uzi in my house. I might own an Uzi, fully automatic, And I would never use that against a human being unless I absolutely had to, unless violence was the only course of action. So there's no issue with me owning that fully automatic weapon, right? People say, oh, there's potential, though. It could be stolen. It could this, it could that. Yeah, but somebody's probably not going to break into my house and steal a fully automatic weapon knowing that there's a fully automatic weapon in my house. And if there were, that's an issue for the police anyway. Plus, firing of an automatic weapon would be pretty obvious, and it seems really stupid, actually, to use one in any sort of crime. So, plus, fully automatic weapons are very inefficient. They're not the best guns ever. So, I don't know why anyone would want to steal one or want to use one anyway. So, it doesn't seem to make any sense, actually. But whole long story about that. But for some reason in Massachusetts, some people are trying to say that you cannot own or they are saying that you cannot own a stun gun of any sort. And of course, we know that that's unconstitutional. The case seeking the Supreme Court's attention concerns Jamie Caetano, who's appealing her 2013 conviction on Second Amendment and self-defense grounds. She claims a right to a stun gun to protect herself from what she said was an abusive father of her children. The penalty of breaching the law carries up to a 2.5-year maximum jail term. She was caught with the device outside a Massachusetts grocery store after allowing the authorities, which she should not have done, by the way, who were looking for a shoplifter, search her purse. Now, that's the first mistake. She should never, ever, ever have allowed the police to search her bag without a warrant. Never do that. Don't let the police search anything without a warrant. Do you have a warrant? That's always a question you should ask. Oh, you want to search my bag, or do you have a warrant? I'd be happy to let you search my bag if you had a warrant. Oh, you don't have a warrant? Well, I'm sorry. I can't let you search my bag. Simple as that. You know, you don't need to be rude. You don't need to be aggressive. But if you don't have a warrant, you can't search my bag. That's all it is to it. You can't search my person. You can't search my car. You can't search my house. Get a warrant. You can't search my outbuildings either. Get a warrant. It's as simple as that. Unfortunately, this lady did not. I'm not sure what the proper. I know for men it's gentleman, but I'm not sure what the proper word is for a female. So I'm not sure if this lady knew that that is the case. But you know, not everybody knows that. Massachusetts top court, however, said that the stun gun is a thoroughly modern invention without constitutional protection, which makes no sense at all because so are modern sneakers. So you could say that you do not have a right to own modern sneakers as they are a modern invention. So the First Amendment or Second Amendment only applies to old things. So then, like, let's say we make up a whole new language. Does the First Amendment no longer apply to this new language? No, of course not. I mean, of course it does, I should say. Of course the First Amendment applies to this new language. Just because the invention itself is new doesn't mean that the intent has changed at all. So this Massachusetts argument is totally ridiculous, and you should be able to carry a stun gun, and in fact, you can carry a stun gun. However, you may be persecuted for doing so. This is Digital Drive here on Hot News Talk Radio. Your rights don't go away, by the way.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode.